our top story this hour, U.S. President Joe Biden wraps up a 3-day visit to Poland and Ukraine, later in what's seen as a massive rallying cry for Western nations to continue their support for Kyiv. Now, Mr. Biden hasn't directly responded to Vladimir Putin's State of the Nation speech yesterday, in which the Russian leader said Moscow plans to withdraw from a nuclear proliferation treaty. But the U.S. president has sought to paint a broader picture of the essential battle between democracies and authoritarian regimes and backing for Ukraine for as long as it takes. From the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, our chief correspondent John Cookson has sent this report.
There's a lot of challenges that we have to face, but I'm confident we can do it together and develop our partnership even further as we meet the challenges we're about to face.
Like Biden's surprise trip to Kyiv, his Polish visit was designed to project an image of unity with the nations of Eastern Europe at a time when Putin's military intentions for the region are far from clear. The visit is also a pledge of solidarity with Poland, which has emerged as a crucial ally of Washington and Kyiv over the past 12 months. There are huge concerns in Poland. If Russia succeeds in its invasion of Ukraine, neighboring Poland might be next.
It's very important because when we don't have Ukraine and Russia will take them, maybe we'll be another target of them.
Biden pledged that the United States and its allies would have Ukraine's back as the war enters its second year. He also warned there were hard and bitter days ahead.
And millions of Russian citizens who only want to live in peace with their neighbors are not the enemy. This war is never a necessity. It's a tragedy. President Putin chose this war. Every day the war continues is his choice. He could end the war with a word. It's simple. If Russia stopped invading Ukraine, it would end the war. If Ukraine stopped defending itself against Russia, it would be the end of Ukraine.
Meanwhile, here in Kyiv, in Ukraine, Ukrainians have two big questions today. First, what kind of military operation is Putin going to pull to mark the first anniversary on Friday? They're fearing a bombing campaign. And secondly, and more generally, how long is this war going to go on? Whilst they mull those questions, the Ukrainian people really appreciate the words of Joe Biden that the West has got their backs.
I'm happy that Joe Biden visited us and support Ukraine, and all Europe and the United States support Ukraine. So I hope the victory will come soon.
But Biden's been speaking in Poland today, repeating his pledge that he supports Ukraine. How do you feel about that?
Thank you so much from support Ukraine. Right now, difficult time about Ukraine, about children, women and men who live in Ukraine. Thank you so much. Ukraine, love you. And I think you love me too.
At a makeshift memorial in Kyiv for Ukraine's fallen, a sharp reminder of the human cost. Grief is something pledges of support from the West is unable to heal. John Cookson, Arise News.
And John Cookson joins us live now from Kyiv. John, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday. That makeshift memorial was really difficult to look at. But you're back in Ukraine after almost a year. What changes have you seen?
Hi ladies, great to be on Newsday. I must say, I just came across that memorial this morning, and it is, as you say, so moving. Those hundreds and hundreds of flags representing dead Ukrainian soldiers. We don't know how many Ukrainians have died in the conflict so far. Some Western estimates put it at 100,000 on both sides, that's Russia and Ukraine, but certainly that memorial in Liberation Square is extremely moving. Huge changes here in Ukraine from the last time I was here. We've just taken Faith Orr, my producer and camera person, and she and I have just taken a 23-hour train journey from Warsaw. Now, when I was here last time in the stretch from the Polish border to Kiev. There were thousands and thousands of people heading out of Ukraine on these massive trains, some of them about 1 kilometer long, and that's how many coaches they had. But there's no one going the other way apart from me heading towards Lviv, as it happens. This time, the complete difference. Lots of Ukrainians starting to return, 7 coach trains, all full, heading to Kiev and Lviv. People returning from their new homes now. They fled a year ago. New homes in England. I met a guy, a father whose family is now living in Luton, in Bedfordshire in England. He'd left his wife and 2 kids at home to return to Kiev to collect his dog, which he had to leave behind when he left last year. And we were just talking, and he said that his business had been disappeared because under a rocket attack from the Russian assault last year. All his employees have been taken into the army. I mean, the lives of these people have just been turned upside down completely by what happened. But he was coming back to Kiev to find out, what's happened to his home, and as I say, to collect his dog and return to the UK. And now when we're here in Kiev, now last time I was here was just at the start of the war. Rockets were falling occasionally in the central part of the city just behind me, crashing with the sound of thunder, if you like. And all the time in the background you could hear the rumble of distant fighting north of Kiev. Today, totally different. As you can see, it's not a bad winter's day here in Kiev. Well, the shops are open, the shopping malls are open, a little kiosk selling coffee are open, the subway is running normally, and people are going about their business. In other words, it's a city that's existing as a city. You might think you were anywhere in Central Europe being here right now, and it's extraordinary that this is, in fact, a war zone, and the people know that. There's a nervousness about the anniversary that's coming up on Friday, but I'm astonished at how well the people have coped and how resilient they are, and that Kiev, the capital, is functioning almost as normal, I would say.
And as you were, going up and down the streets of Kiev, of course, we got to hear from the voices of the people, and it seems that Joe Biden's visit has proved to be quite a morale boost for just regular citizens in Kiev. Well, what would you say about Joe Biden's visit? Has it been a success?
I think Joe Biden's supporters will say it's been a huge success. Some Democrats are likening it to John F. Kennedy's visit to Berlin at the height of the Cold War in 1963, when Kennedy famously declared, "Ich bin eine Berliner," and Biden was here the other day saying he'd left his heart in Ukraine. So there is that praise for Biden, and many Ukrainian people say to me, well, it shows that the whole world supports us. That's partly true. There are countries in the world that support Russia, of course, particularly those in the southern hemisphere. One thinks of South Africa and China, as we can perhaps discuss in a moment. India too. Turkey is a supporter of Russia. So it's not all support from the West, but predominantly Western nations, including, of course, America, is supporting Ukraine. Biden this afternoon meeting the Bucharest 9 nations. These are nations that are formerly from the Soviet bloc, and it's more them thanking Biden for America's support, but also Biden will be asking them what ammunition and general military hardware they can pool together to offer to the Ukrainians.
Well, thank you so much, John. Now, China's Wang Yi is meeting his Russian opposite number. That's Sergei Lavrov. How significant is that?
Yes, it's very significant. And not only Lavrov, in the last hour, he's met with President Putin, which is even more significant, of course. This, of course, comes as the Chinese were reported by US intelligence services as being on the brink of supplying arms to Russia. We know that they already sell non-lethal military hardware to the Russians, including helmets and flak jackets. And Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, had a quiet word with Wang Yi and said, look, if you want to, or if you're going to supply weapons to Russia, then there will be consequences. It seems that Wang Yi now appears to be taking sides on China's behalf. Meeting with Putin, of course, is very significant. So we'll have to wait and see how that all works out. But the prospect of China and Russia banding together against the forces of the West is just so horrible to contemplate.
Right, and of course you also mentioned in your report that tensions are currently high in Kyiv, where of course there's fears of another missile strike to mark the first anniversary of the invasion. We are anticipating
Every person
something.
you speak to here in the capital expects something bad to happen on Friday. Putin, of course, has been the master of these bombing blitzes that have started back in October, cruise missiles flying over the city, landing and taking out apartment blocks and electricity power plants and the like. That's been going on for months now. Also, drones tumbling on the city, not only here in Kyiv but elsewhere in Ukraine. And the Ukrainian people are expecting some kind of spectacular, from a military point of view, from Russia. All the kids have been let off school on Friday. There'll be no educational establishments open on Friday because the government is scared about what may happen. So people are hunkered down. There's 48 hours to go before the first anniversary. But to answer your question, the Ukrainian people are very fearful about what might happen on Friday.
Well, thank you so much, Iraq's Chief Correspondent John Cookson, live from Kyiv. Please be safe, and thank you so much for your analysis. We appreciate you here on Newsday.